Hey, good morning or good afternoon. I'm so aligned with the mission of the Talent Board and so appreciate the opportunity they've given me to present to you today. When we did this title 3 months ago, I felt like we'd be in a post-pandemic environment. But obviously with the Delta variant surging now, it seems like we're just in a different phase of the pandemic. What I want to share with you today are some labor market and economic realities as I see them, and discuss 3 things you need to consider to thrive in these continued difficult times. My name is Darren Finley, and I have the honor of leading the Recruitment Solutions Group at Engage to Excel. I've been in recruiting for 30 years, and I just love being able to craft plans that will help elevate the talent strategies and help our customers find and keep top talent. And, that's what we do at Engage to Excel. We help create great career experiences. We help them find and keep the best talent. And in today's environment, I can't think of 2 more important objectives for organizations. So let's jump in. If you haven't already noticed the title, it's kind of a spoiler alert. Today we're talking about how money, managers, and recognition make up the hiring trifecta. Today there's this unprecedented convergence of labor dynamics that are really driving the challenges in the market. We've got extremely strong economic growth, and that's driving labor demand in all sectors of the economy. Labor participation rates are at the lowest they've been since 1976, and have not really improved over the last 12 months when we've added a lot of different jobs. And now we're basically back to full employment at 5.4% unemployment in July. So what we're going to see in the next quarter is volatility and more turmoil. Employers will struggle to balance the immediate staffing needs with this mismatch between demand and supply. As of July, there are over 10 million open jobs, the most since they started tracking. So there'll continue to be labor shortages for the short term. There's also additional wage pressure and fluctuation in the labor supply, driving much of the rise in wages that we're seeing. Low-skilled labor demand are seeing the greatest wage increases. After just averaging 5% over the last 10 years, we've seen some significant spikes in wages in the last several months. And the Great Resignation, well, it's real. A survey that Microsoft did a few months ago said that over 40% of employees are going to consider leaving. We did one last month, and it said 58% of employees who consider the things that they're going to be working for a new organization in the next 6 months. This will create additional openings to fill and turn within the organization. And add this to the pressure of already increased demand-driven growth in the roles we're trying to fill. The reality is that it is an employee or candidates market. There's never been a better time to look for a job if you're a candidate. There are hiring signs everywhere you look. So kind of the economics of it are driving selective search and job shopping. It really is beginning to impact recruiting metrics. We're seeing time to fill increase as candidates evaluate and do comparison shopping. They shop your pay, your schedule, your benefits, your company culture, your work from home options, and quite honestly, the working conditions at your organization. So if the manufacturing or some kind of plant that they're working in or warehouse, they're evaluating those things. The other thing that's really helping exacerbate the problem that we have today is the savings rate. So you have to consider that over the past 12 to 18 months, the savings rate, which for the past 25 years has averaged about 5%, has jumped to between 12 and 13% on average, even as high as 27% this past March. Pandemic relief, delayed spending, lack of available housing to put your down payments on, have created a financial safety net like never before. Yes, there are those in hospitality and leisure and some industries that were hit really hard that have been struggling financially. But the fact remains that savings accounts are fatter now than they've ever been before. And many candidates have spent the last several months at home reflecting on their priorities, on their family, their career growth and development, and what's most important to them. Along with the savings increase, there's also another phenomenon that's coming right behind them. This is great inheritance and the great wealth transfer has already kind of started to some degree with the older boomers and the greatest generation. Did you know the average inheritance is going to be over $200,000? Now, that's not completely life-changing, but it certainly provides a buffer or a cushion to reflect. And many of those boomers who are now in retirement age. Actually, there's so many boomers in retirement age, they're retiring at a pace of over 200,000 a month. That's right, over 200,000 a month are retiring. So again, more pressure on the labor market. So you wonder, is there a potential lift that's coming with the pandemic relief discontinuation on September the 6th, with schools reopening and in-person classes, and hopefully this Delta variant will start to wane a little bit. But those things are going to be critical to happen in order for individuals to have the ability and the confidence to go back to work. And we need to get more people to work. We need to get more people back into the labor market. We need to get women participating back in the labor market again. But I'll tell you, the demographics are kind of against us, and again, unemployment's down at 5.4%. And remember, in my last presentation, I talked about the hiring tsunami that was coming. Well, guess what? It's here, and it's coming crashing down. So it's time to buckle down and get serious about how your organization is going to respond. So one more set of data I'd like to share with you. This is really kind of hot off the presses from our 2021 Job Seeker Mindset Report and survey that just came out. We surveyed over 1,500 passive and active job seekers, and we wanted to update some of the information that we had from our 2019 study. We skipped last year, as you can all imagine why. But here's just a sampling of the results. The data on the left highlights the importance of engaging your candidates and your new hires as early as possible in the process. Interaction with those in the current roles is important, and of course, the hiring managers are critical. And you see how much they've jumped significantly since we did the survey in 2019. The most astonishing response to me was that 100% of those surveys, they would entertain and would like to learn about new opportunities. That jumped 18% from 2019. 100%. Everybody wants to listen. Everyone is in the great reflection. It's real. So reevaluating your priorities, your working conditions, your pay, your career growth, all those factors are driving what's now been termed as the great resignation. So as candidates are using this time to reflect, the recruitment process, all of us put them through, has got a lot more scrutiny overall. COVID really helped with the adoption of video interviewing, both from a candidate perspective and a hiring manager perspective. But meeting that hiring manager and getting to know them remains the most important relationship to cultivate with candidates. How many times have you had hiring managers who might be late to an interview or cancel an interview at the last minute or postpone that? You've really got to educate the hiring managers on the labor market, which is now an employee and a candidate market. And I say both employee and candidate because we know employees are looking around. So show a little respect. Staying in contact with those candidates post-offer has also increased in importance from 44% to 57% since 2019. And the most important stat, the one that comes to keeping your team, is understanding that 58% of passive and active candidates believe they'll be working for another employer in the next 6 months. That's a terrifying number to me. So the great reflection is real, and it's supported by a labor market that has an abundance of open roles. Wages are going up, savings rates are at an all-time high, and it's driving the great resignation. So how can you get in the offensive instead of playing defense? Well, let's be honest, our dynamics are changing in this market at a pace we've never seen before. And so we're all probably playing a little bit of defense to some degree. So let's try to get ahead of this wave and get on the offense and be proactive in how we approach. And we do that with the hiring trifecta. So when you consider the current labor market and all the demographic factors that are there, we know we have to be really smart about finding and engaging top talent. So let's break it down to 3 simple concepts that'll make sure that you're focused on the levers that you can pull that'll make the biggest impact. And we call it the hiring trifecta. It's about money, managers, and recognition. Based on our research from both the most recent Trifecta report and Dr. Jack Riley's new book, The Employee-Centered Manager, we know what is most important to candidates and to employees. Being proactive and strategic about how you're going to pull these levers to make all the difference in the world between being behind or way behind your competition, or if you're really focused, starting to get ahead of your competition. First, let's talk money. Now, we'll spare you the Jerry Maguire impression here, but we've witnessed a 16% increase in overall wages in the last 36 months. Some job planners have seen a lot more than that. But this is a trend that does not look like it's subsiding anytime soon. When you think about salaries and compensation, know that it's a deeply personal conversation, and there are a variety of emotions at play when discussing compensation. Now, my caveat here is that I'm not a compensation expert, but here's what we do know about pay, and there's really two things, right? That number one, it has to be market and role competitive, the right money for the right role. Being at the mid-range is basically just table stakes. So you're going to have to make a strategic decision within your organization where you're going to land on the pay scale. And number two, you have to have the right pay for the right impact. People want to know how they can impact their pay. So whether it's a bonus, whether it's overtime, tips, production bonuses, our motivation to exert discretionary effort is directly tied to several things. But pay and how my actions can impact my pay are critically important. Recognition is the next on the list of impact, but we'll get to that in a moment. With some new regulations that are now in place, your ability to gain insight into past compensation has been limited. And to some degree, I think that's a good thing because it has us think about compensation in a new way. It leads us to make critical decisions about pay and pay for performance. To consider what is the role and what are the individuals' worth in the organization and the value they're providing back to that. You have to think through that. Are there any work from home implications? Are there any geographic, cost of living standards that must be considered? Another survey we did earlier this year, we found that 58% of individuals who've been given offers also had competing offers in the 2 weeks between their offer acceptance and their start date, that they would be willing to consider those. So we've seen significant wage inflation at the entry-level wage roles for the last really 4 to 8 months now. It started out last fall when the labor force was at its lowest participation rate and really hasn't gotten any better as everyone competes with this limited supply of candidates to attract them to their roles and their role versus the ones across the street. According to salary.com, they released a survey they did August the 12th. 62% of organizations in the U.S. plan to increase their base salary to attract new hourly and salaried employees in the next 6 months. That's a pretty significant number of organizations that are outwardly saying we're going to be increasing our base wages. And I'll be the first one to tell you how extremely difficult it is to go back to your senior leadership or your board and ask to give wholesale raises across the board and increase that cost back to the organization, sometimes millions and millions of dollars. So start with those that are mission critical, that keep the lights on, that keep the revenue coming in. And since we're not completely sure what the next months are going to bring, consider other non-wage incentives like sign-on bonuses, retention bonuses, production bonuses to provide additional compensation. That same report in salary.com stated that 50% of organizations are now offering sign-on bonuses, although only 20% would admit they're going to keep doing it past the end of the year. So again, everybody's trying to consider what's going to happen over the next several months. Will we see the labor participation rate go up? Will we see more candidates coming to the market? So in the short-term incentives and salary increases, you got to be really careful and carefully think out what considerations you have for your existing employees as well. So when you think through all those things, I just think you have to show them the money, both in short-term incentives and long-term opportunity to help drive your hiring velocity. The second in our trifecta are the managers. And managers are really the driving force behind business success. They have the daily interaction with your frontline employees and many times your customers. There are over 24 million managers in the U.S. today. Think about that, right? 24 million managers. And over 70% of those managers, according to Dr. Jack's new book, have received either no people management training or the training was capped at basically 4 hours. And that's kind of astonishing to me as well. Dr. Wiley surveyed over 80,000 employees in 27 different countries for the data in his new book, The Employee-Centric Manager. The research completed for that book gives us the insight we need to build effective managers who can drive engagement, team chemistry, and team productivity. When you begin to compare top-rated employee-centric managers with those managers who demonstrate the 8 attributes that Jack talks about and what the employees most want, but those who do not demonstrate those attributes, we find that top-rated employee-centric managers perform higher in all 3 categories of employee engagement, team chemistry, and team productivity. Compared to those at the bottom, you can see there's significant differences. Employee engagement, which increases from 20% at the bottom up to 97%. Team chemistry becomes the glue that keeps teams together, and productivity soars. So when you think of what it means to be an employee-centric manager, Dr. Jack's research tells us there are 5 behaviors, 1 skill, and 2 values. When it comes to managers who develop and deliver on these attributes, they create high-performing teams, and retention rates are increased by 75%. How about that punch in the gut to the Great Resignation, right? So it's pretty powerful. But when you think about the best manager in your career, and you look at the attributes, you begin to see those behaviors and values and skills that really become a magnet for your employees, and it's a magnet for potential candidates. Dr. Jack's book is a kind of a practical guide for managers to focus on the things that will create these teams. And just remember that managers are always at the center of the equation when it comes to both hiring or finding the best talent. They're doing the interviews, right? And then keeping that best talent. It's so critical that we begin to equip them with the insights to create great team chemistry and engagement that drives performance. It's also easy to see how the 2 values of being fair and just combined with honesty and trustworthiness will flow into the behaviors as they set clear performance expectations through dignity and respect and support and understanding. Providing recognition is not just important in the hiring process, it continues to be a significant driver of top-performing organizations through spot recognition, employee-centric recognition, which means rewarding those individuals in a way that they have their preferences about how they receive recognition, and also rewarding performance contribution. And the last thing I'll mention is like the skill of problem solving. And employees want to have confidence they're being led well. Managers who are good at making decisions and problem solving are highly valued. And many times, them providing their team with direction is a critical skill. Even sometimes helping them craft a solution through guidance. Both for teams and individuals, this helps drive that cohesive team chemistry. So being an employee-centric manager will help you be a great hiring manager and a team manager. As you bring potential candidates in to meet your team will then demonstrate those same behaviors and skills and values that you as a manager have instilled through your example, creating a great place to work. And that leads us to number 3, which is recognition. Not only is it a critical behavior for the employee-centric manager, it's also a highly valued attribute by candidates who are going through the interview process. When you look at the results of the Trifecta survey, 29%, almost a third of candidates indicated that the top reason they would accept a role with an organization is due to recognition, appreciation, and respect demonstrated during the recruiting process from both recruiters and hiring managers alike. And for both of these reasons, the top reasons for both offer acceptance and rejection, recognition came in first, slightly above compensation. So job fit also ranks very high in both the recognition, the rejection, and acceptances. So as we create a recruiting process and an offer process, we've got to keep in mind what are the drivers of acceptance and rejection. So you may ask yourself, well, how do you give recognition during the hiring process as you're getting ready to learn who these people are? So there's a couple of ideas we have around this. And so think about the different ways you can show that. And it begins with respect. And it's mind-boggling today that so many managers either show up late or reschedule interviews at the last minute. And this employee and candidate-centric market, when there's 10 million open jobs out there, the risk of losing top candidates is extremely high. Don't give them a reason to walk away and not talk to you. Also, make sure that you, as a manager and an interviewer, you limit your distractions. We're so glued to our mobile phones and our laptops, and I am guilty as charged. So if you're not doing virtual interviews, try to find someplace that's comfortable, that's relaxing, that's quiet, or maybe even role appropriate for those candidates that you can be present now. I was mentioning to a good friend of mine at United Health Group not too long ago that I appreciated so much the cultural transformation that they went through several years ago. And one of those values was being present now, be here now, right? For those meetings, those interviews, those conversations. It gave us all permission to put down those distractions and kind of put them to the side for a moment and focus on the conversation or the task at hand. It also created an environment for listening, for positive intent, and increased our comprehension of the topics at hand. So secondly, make it real for your candidates. Introduce other organizational leaders, provide a tour when possible, maybe even a virtual tour. Let them see the workplace and the offices in your manufacturing facilities, showing the good, bad, and ugly represents a transparent view of what the day in the life is going to be like that they're going to experience. When you think about the power of recognition and the pride and the affinity that it creates for those that are recognized, look for and listen to the candidate's past achievements. Probe into those. How did they accomplish those tasks? Congratulate them on that accomplishment. Then relate that experience or milestone to your organization and how that can make an impact in the new potential role with you. That's using recognition in the recruiting process. And lastly, I love our surprise and delight. I think the ultimate recognition is the act of accepting a job offer, or the behavior of accepting a job offer as a welcome gift sent to the candidate's home. Remember that stat that 58% of candidates are looking at or could have other offers during the time they accepted your offer and before they start. So a branded welcome gift with a personal note from your CEO or senior leadership reconfirms that they made the right decision to accept that offer and join your organization. So recognizing the right behaviors and then setting the stage for recognition culture at your organization. And quite selfishly, we see a 20% increase in our first day show rates when we deploy welcome gifts as part of our solution with our customers. So it really helps things become more efficient and more effective in the recruiting process. So let's review, break it down to 3 simple concepts to make sure you're focused on the levers that will make the greatest impact. We call it the hiring trifecta. It's about money, managers, and recognition. The right money at the right time for the right role or the right incentive. The employee-centric manager who demonstrates the 5 behaviors, 2 values, and 1 skill that drives employee engagement, team chemistry, and performance. And then recognition during the recruiting and hiring process, which will create candidates who are drawn into your hiring process and not pushed away, and will validate that the candidates are making the right choice of accepting your offer. I really appreciate your time today. I hope that you found this information insightful and helpful. If engaged yourself can be of any assistance, I'd love to talk to you, or if you have like to know more about the labor market insights that we have, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.